Hello, my name is Hugh Boyd and today I'm going to show you how to basic color correct an image. So basically any image that you want to make look good, that looks bad from the start, I can help you fix that. So color correctness, sharpness, chromatic aberration, lens distortion, I'll go through all of that today. I'll make it quick. So here we go. So I've got the file here. I've dragged it into Lightroom. I'm in library here, so all I need to do is tap on develop at the top and I'm in the editing panel area of Lightroom. So first thing I do is I get my brightness on my MacBook to medium so that I am editing as true to the image as I can in obviously in an environment that is sort of dark and no color light coming into the room, such as a blue day or an orange tungsten light. So this light here is not ideal, but here we go. So I'm zooming into the image here and it's not as clear as I want it to be. I've not been able to scan this myself, but the first thing that I do is I crop it. So here we go. Yep, it's square, it's 1:1 square, so that's how the image was shot. This was shot on proper film, so Kodak Portrait on a Hasselblad camera, and you've never edited photographs until you've edited film. It's very excruciating. So making sure this crop is correct, getting the most out of the image as I can. Fine. Cool, so that's quite nice. What's the first thing that I normally do? I normally get the highlights and the shadows correct first. Don't do anything to do with the color balance. So very overexposed in the highlights here. Let's bring those down, and we can see how far we're getting along in the histogram here. If it's too much out of here, then that's not where we want to be. Let's bring that down a bit. We don't have to go off this all the time. We just have to look at the image. It's quite difficult to look at this camera in my face, but especially this light. We're just doing basic touch-ups to what I like as an image. I have some presets that I've already made here. Sometimes I'll press on these images and these presets that I've made here, for example. Some that I've downloaded, some that I've downloaded for free as well. But normally I like to, if it's a film photograph, I try and stay as true to the film as I can once it's been scanned in. Whites, leave that alone. Blacks, bring the true blacks in. Those blacks were lost before, and we can tell because here they were lost. See here? Let's bring those down. Those true blacks come in, come back. We can zoom in. I like this to be more clear. I've not been able to scan this myself, so I'm just gonna sharpen this up. I like to over sharpen because when you zoom out, you can really tell that it's been sharpened. Not too much, but just enough to be slightly exaggerated. I have to zoom into ratio 2:1 here. Put in a little bit of noise, and there's not a lot of noise. It's 160 speed film, 160 ISO, so not a lot of grain at all. So I'm testing it here. I'm testing it by looking here, looking here, looking here, looking here. I'm testing whether it should be non-reduction of grain or a lot. So I can tell that, by testing between, here and here, that it doesn't need a lot, it just needs a touch, just so I can tell how much. It doesn't need, if anything, at all. Color is important because there's color noise. You don't want color noise. You normally get that through digital raw files. This is a raw file, this is a TIFF file. Scanned it as a TIFF, the film. But you do get color noise come up every now and again. You don't want to do it too much because it takes away the true color of what you're actually taking a photo of. Just a little bit. Take away some of the of what the flatbed scanner might have scanned. Oh yes, profile corrections and chromatic aberration. Chromatic aberration is when the edges of the lens don't quite give off a purple bluey haze, reddy haze at the edges if the lens is quite wide. With this being an 80mm focal length, there won't be a lot of chromatic aberration at all. So I'm zooming in and out, having a look. If there's any chromatic aberration, it's just taken care of that. I want it to be a little bit more sharper. I've not been able to get the best high res scan out of this, so just over sharpening it just to accentuate the clarity of what I actually saw. Okay, very warm. I like a cooler photo, that's just me. Do I want any clarity? Not a lot. It looks kind of cheap when you do a lot too much clarity, so I'm just going to put a touch in. A trick in the film industry and photo industry, I was told, to enhance the general colours of the day. Don't put up the saturation. It makes it look very not nice. So the first thing I do is turn the saturation down and give the vibrance a push, and that makes it seem like the colour is true and it's there. But taking away the saturation just takes away the too much of what might come up through pushing saturation, but pushing the vibrance of the image, which pushes the image's colours up in a slightly different way. So let's just compare these. I'm pressing Y to compare from the left in the original file to the right. It's still quite warm now, so let's go ahead and cool that down a tad. I like it. I like it a lot. Oh dear, too cool. Just a little bit, I think. And I can change these. If I, let's say for example, push this down too much blue, it's too blue, I can double tap on the Lightroom and it takes me back to the center. Or let's say we're there again, I can tap on the up and down arrows, and I can just, in increments of 5, I can make quicker, finer adjustments. I'm using my trackpad at the moment, so it's not as fast as me using the mouse, but you don't want to hear me click along. Here we go, -6, let's compare. Yeah, it's cool. It's warm, but it's not over the top. I want to bring those shadows up a bit though. I'm not making this an HDR photograph, which is high dynamic range. I'm not doing that to the image, but I'm bringing the clarity out in the day. Let's go to those highlights. Let's have a look, see what they're doing. There are quite a lot of them. Let's just bring it down a lot and see what that does to the image. It does flatten it a lot. I want to see some of the clarity of the day. Okay, let's bring that vibrance up a tad. And by that, I'm just going to put the saturation back to where it was originally in the photograph, so just a touch. Okay, so what have we done? We've done sharpening, we've not done any colour correction, we've just done fine adjustments to the brightness, exposure and whatnot. So let's go into now this is a very good scan, to be fair, so we're not doing an awful lot to the colours of the shadows or the highlights, but let's say if we wanted to, we could go into split toning. I don't like to use this a lot because sometimes it puts on a fake shadow or a hue to the image. But in this case, let's give it a shot. So for us to see what we're doing in the shadows of this image, let's go right in. Wow, it's already too good for me to edit, but let's just go ahead and what I mean there is that the black is a true black. And let's have a look. We're having a look at these trees, and the greens match the midtones and the highlights of the colours of the image. So in the shadows here, I have really nice, actually, shadows. Let's put in a shadow here. Now this is a haze of red, and we can tell what colour we're doing here by looking on this slider. Let's put in this all the way. There we go. We can tell that it's now a red that we're putting into the image, because we can't really tell if this is on 0. We can't tell because this grey thing here stays as it is. So red, we know that it's red because we've tested it, and we're just gonna put a bit into this. And if we zoom out, we might not be able to tell first looking at the image that we can obviously tell that it's got a red hue in the shadow, but we go, we've gone, how do we fix this? We're going to zoom in, we're going to have a look. Okay, let's try and fix that. So we're going to go, green, very green there. We want to turn that down. We might go to here. Oh, it's more of a teal. That's quite a nice. Yeah, I quite like that. It's a blue shadow there, and we've put on a blue haze. Because originally, if we cool the image down here too much, we might cool the image down. That's what we want to do, but we might cool it down in a way that changes the shadows. Now, when we cool it here, we're changing the colours of the all of the image. But if we're going down to split toning, we're changing the colours of the shadows. So, I kind of like that. From the original, I like the blue haze that we're putting in here. Slight blue, cool tint into the shadow. If anything, this is a green. I think we're doing a green. Let's just test it. a teal, definitely a turquoise teal. So let's just do this. We don't want to lose the true greens of the day because those trees are a lovely warm colour. So let's just put it up enough to see the greens. Nice, really nice. I'm not going to do any further than that. Highlights, grey, very grey in the highlights. So let's just see if we can put anything into these highlights. Oh gosh. We can see that these are quite red, green. Originally, if I can look at this image, yeah, it's quite green in the highlights. So let's, opposite of green, let's just test it here. Purple, hue, red, warm, quite warm. So, let's see how much we can do with this. I kind of like that. It's very green before, and we're pushing, because we put it a greeny turquoise in the shadows, we want to adjust the highlights, and putting a bit of warmth into those highlights. Now let's compare. For me, that's quite warm of an image, but I think that's quite nice. Let's go back to the top and call it down just a tad more. That's just personal preference. Really nice. Okay, so we've done colour corrections now, as well as sharpening and basic touch-ups to the lightness of the image. So, what are we going to do next? Let's get rid of this tab by pressing here. Gets rid of that, makes my editing panel more concise. Sometimes I get rid of this if I don't need it on a lot, but this just gives me a vignette if I need. Oof, not a fan of vignettes, but hey ho, this is how you do it. Vignettes are more dramatic on wider focal lenses, that's what I think anyway. Common in the fashion industry, gives a more focused point of view on the centre of the image. So let's, is this necessary in this image? I don't think it is. So let's just leave it as it is. And do I want to add any lightness to the edges of the image? No. Let's leave it as it is. We don't want to add grain, if that's your preference. No, not today. What else are we doing here? So we are, here we go, HSL. HSL stands for hue, saturation and luminance. Let's change the hues of the green. How do we do this? So let's pinpoint the green here. Saturation, no, the hue of the image is the colour, basically the colour of the particular colour, so it's the colour of the colour. And we can change the colour of the colour by, here we go, we're given 8 different colours to pick. Now, obviously there are more than 8 colours here, there are millions of different colours in all images in the world, and this image in particular, we want to edit more than just one colour. For example, what Lightroom might think is green, okay, we're editing all of the images green there, and it less of making the green more of a warm, looks nice. The trees are blending now into the mountain, and if we push up the green, they look sort of fake. So double tap, take that back to the center, and if you want to actually change the color of the color, we tap on this thing here, and this is the pointer, and we get to adjust the hue by dragging into the photo. Oh no, we're not opening all the tabs, we're just going to hue, take that back to hue, and we're tapping on this, we're tapping that. I'm going to choose a colour here, so it might be easier if we zoomed in just to see exactly what we're looking at. So generally that's a green. And what we do, we tap and hold, and we're dragging what the Lightroom recognises as, you see here, it sees it as an aqua as well as a green, so we can change. So before we do that, Command Z, zoom out, and let's do it again. So we're picking a green, and we're sliding down. It does recognise that as a full-on green, so let's just see if, for argument's sake, let's choose, see if it recognises any other images. It's just recognising everything as green, so take that back to Command Z. Okay, well, here we go. So it's picked out an image, a colour, and it's choosing it as yellow, and it's taking the yellows to more warm and the greens to warm, and it's really making those trees sort of very autumnal in colour. Back up to the top. Very fake. So what do we think? I think we, for the sake of editing this image, let's make those greens pop a bit more. So we're pushing the colour of the green that we've selected is more than a green, it's a green and it's a bit of a yellow as well. pushing that up. There we go. I think comparing it middle up, it's more of a natural in the middle. For the sake of editing this image in a particular way, let's make those greens pop a bit more. Same again with luminance. We choose here with the selector. We push it up and we select that's the brightness of the colour, luminance. Make them bright. They look quite nice actually. If we bring them down, it makes them very flat. So let's just push that up again. And it's not just changing the greens in the trees, it's changing the greens of the whole image, and that green matches a green in the shadows in the foreground and the background. So down, up. I think I like it up. Gives it a bit of contrast to the image. So let's press Y. Oh, press done first. Y. Pressing Y. Quite contrasty. Not my kind of style. So now what we're going to do is bring the contrast down a bit. What does that do? Doesn't look very poppy. Sometimes an editing technique that I like to do is bring contrast down a lot, but counter edit by going to clarity, pushing clarity up. It gives it a very rustic. Don't like that, but for the sake of our editing again, we're going to bring the contrast down a tad, not too much, just a little bit, and then clarity up a tad. And that makes the landscape pop a bit more. I like that. I like that a lot. So, what can we do now? Just checking the image. Now, I've done the sharpening before. I like to go over the sharpening again just to really finalise before I edit, or export a 100 megabyte file. Let's go down to sharpening again, because when you export it as either a 100 megabyte TIFF or a PSD or a DNG file, we also want to export it as a JPEG, because we don't want the image to be huge. So we zoom in to 2:1. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to ratio 3:1, just so we can really see. That's about 300% if you're in Photoshop RAW. For the sake of editing, I'm going to whack that sharpening back to where it would have been in the original scan, and we can tell that this has not been scanned incredibly well. But my focus, when I was making the image, my focusing might have been off, but here we go. We're going to sharpen that halfway. It looks a bit too much just under halfway. Now what do these two do? I sometimes, most of the time, leave these, but for you to really see what you're editing, what you do is you hold down Alt at the same time as dragging these two, as well as any of these up and down. And we can tell what this does to the sharpening. So, for example, let's go to radius. Now, what does radius do? For example, let's just go back to the top. Let's go to the sky. Now, sometimes when you sharpen an image, you will sharpen everything. You'll sharpen absolutely everything. So, for example, when you're on a cloud or a soft colour, a plain image, a soft blank colour, or a tone like a black or a white, we don't often want to sharpen that because we don't need to sharpen. But what we do need to sharpen is what we focused on and what might have structure in the image. So, just here we go. For example, we've got the sky and we've got the landscape here. So what we've done, we've sharpened it up to a certain extent, just under halfway, and we're holding Alt now, and we're choosing radius. And what we can see here, let's go back to detail. Holding Alt, we are sliding back to bottom. Okay, we want to just do it until we can see the pixels in the sky, because we don't need to sharpen the pixels in the sky. That's why every time you bring in a photo into Lightroom, it leaves those two there, because it's automatically edited the sharpness a little bit. Detail, holding Alt, and it turns it black and white so that you can see what you're actually sharpening. Because you're not sharpening colour, you're sharpening pixels. Back to the 0. That's 2. We want it a bit more sharp than that, and if we overdo it, we can see that we are sharpening the sky, and we don't need to do this. It makes it look, if anything, grainy. So let's bring this down and keep comparing from high to low to see where it might be. I think there I can just about see some pixels in the sky. but we want it enough. Good. Foreground's nice. Up to radius. Again, this is a similar technique, but it gives you a bit more detail. There we go. Look, we're really sharpening that foreground there. But look again in the sky, we're sharpening it a bit too much. And I think I'm happy enough for then to go down to noise reduction. So we had this one maybe down here, and we had a detail up here. So we've done quite a bit to that. More often than I would edit, because sharpening serves to suffice its purpose, does its purpose. Now I go to noise reduction. We've already done this before, but for the sake of editing, if anything, I don't actually need to put any noise reduction into this at all. But what it does do is it smooths out the image a tad. Okay, let's zoom out. Really nice. This is a really nice image. Now, one more point as I will go over when I'm editing images, basic image editing. It normally takes me quicker than 21 minutes because I'm not explaining everything to myself when I'm doing it. But again, something I like to clear up is haze. Now, haze happens through through long distances, because when you have minerals in the air and just the general air, and what's in the air is seen and photographed through long things being far away. So going into the distance now, I think this is over 2 miles away, or a mile, well, definitely over a mile, definitely 2 miles away in this image. So I'm zooming in now, back to very nice, but it's hazy and it's blue, and it turns blue when it's hazy. So what I'm going to do is try and fix this. I don't do this often, but what I do to reduce the haze, I will go and do this. So let's make this to 2:1. We're going to choose the saturation, because it's the color. We're trying to get rid of the color and make the rocks true color without editing the rest of the image. So I'm going to do now a brush tool. Now, if I wasn't to do a brush tool and I was to change the color of the blue here, it would change all the rest of the colors of the image, and that's not what I want to do. I want to do the furthest part away, which is all of this landscape. So I'm going to leave, put it to fill, and do brush tool. So brush tool is up here on the right. What we're going to do, we're going to do our own thing. We've got loads of, I've got some presets that I've downloaded for this here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my own. So how do I reset this? I'm going to try and do the easiest one to fix exposure. So there we go. Saturation. So it's saturation. We're going to do a lot so we can see what we're doing on the way. And we're also going to tick show selected mask. So for example, if I make this bigger, this here, I'm scrolling up and down to make the size of the mask brush tool bigger. I'm just going to do a haze, and that, if I have this tick show selected mask overlay, it means that I can see where I'm doing, and that's really good. And I tick this off and on all the time so that I can see and compare and to see where I've been, basically. So I generally, let's put this back to fill so we can see what we're doing. I want to just do from here in the landscape all the way down to here, and that'll take most of the haze away. Also, when I'm doing this, I'm going to put something else in. So let's just select the area that we want to, make the brush tool smaller for minute sections. Excuse the motorbikes. Outside. Now, Lightroom is really good because it will know that all I'm editing is the landscape here. So even though my brush is overlapping the sky, it will automatically know that I am editing just the landscape. So let's zoom in for having a look. What it's missed off is here, is these rocks, which is somewhat annoying. But to fix this, you just go over it and again until Lightroom figures out that yes, I do actually want to edit what I'm actually selecting. So you just got to do it a few times. But that's a really good way for Lightroom to figure out that, you know, you don't have to do a pen tool. Let's zoom in, because I've actually just gone over the edge of this into the sky here, which is fine. And to erase here now, we're going to press Alt, and that's a different size. We change that, so we're Normally you just move the cursor around and make your selection as to where you want to do it, and then you're pressing Alt to minus off what you've done. And that's fine, that's really good. So let's just zoom out 10. I think I've done some up here as well. Oops, how do I? Spacebar, grabbing, moving, Alt, minus, like I've done here accidentally, so that's fine, no problem. Zoom out. Really nice. So I know that I've done all this landscape now and it's hazy. It could be hazy over here as well, so we could just do that, just in case. Unselect, see what I've done. It's very desaturated because I've asked it to. So let's just put the saturation back up, and that really does, actually, yeah, saturation. And that sort of matches the colour of the shadow in the foreground here, just the foreground here. I can put the saturation up, and I'm going to put the clarity up as well, because clarity puts back into the image what is missed off in the foreground. So let's just compare that. If I took away the clarity, it looked quite hazy. Putting in clarity puts that structure, that detail, and that sharpness in. If anything, I can zoom in. I can zoom in and I can see exactly what I'm doing. I can put more sharpness in to really give the feel of the image back to where I wanted it and how I saw it in the day. I didn't see that haze, but the camera picked it up. Zoom out. Great, I think this looks wonderful. We talked about a blue haze as well, so let's put some of the warmth back into this. And I'm just tapping on the arrow plus to change this. Now, I can't really see if I'm doing it in tiny amounts over a long time, so I'm just going to whack a big one up and see how much is too much and how much is not enough. For a dynamic image, you could probably make that cooler, but it doesn't look good. Cool, I think that's really good. Let's just compare that with, if I put up to about 7, if I double tap, it takes it back to 0. And it's tiny, but yes, I've put more the colour back to where I think it was or is. Yep, that's nice, I think 9. If anything, there's still a bit of haze here, so I'm just going to use, to make this brush tool bigger and smaller, I'm using the bracket tool. Bracket left, small, bracket right, bigger. So let's do that. Nice, cool, I'm happy with this. Making sure we get everything. And to finish this off, we're going to press done. We're still in the tool, so pressing done, and that's it. To get back into that, pressing the brush tool, and what I'm doing now is a new custom edit. I don't want to do that, but if I want to go back to this, I'm just clicking on this. If I want to delete it, move it, duplicate it, I can right click and I can edit it again. So I'm pressing done. Great, I'm happy with this. Let's take it back to the original. The blue haze is gone. I put the sharpness into the image. Oh, there we go. Took time to load. There we go. There's some cloud definition here. Let's see if we can bring some of that back. If you bring the highlights down too much, it's very flat as an image. And it's not true, and you can tell here because all this information, there's all this information here, right, from 00 all the way to 255 here, right? We want to make sure we're using all of this information of the image. And I've just shown you this by tapping this white back to 0. Put this back to 0 here. There's still a tiny bit of information here, but we've lost that through highlights here. If anything, we don't actually need to bring the highlights down. We want to use all of the plethora of images, of colour and light and tone in the images as much as we can. Great. Right, I'm really happy with this. Thank you for watching my video. I'll do a quick export for you to show you how I do it. So Shift Command E, export in Lightroom as opposed to Photoshop. I'm going to choose where it goes. 5 terabyte, photos, film, Hasselblad, and Burbage Brook in Derbyshire. Choose, that's the place where it's going. Where are we doing it as? I want it 100% quality. I want it as a JPEG. I don't want one watermark over it. Fantastic. Export. That's it. Thank you for watching how to do basic color correction and everything else. Thanks very much.